Hello, everyone. So, today, what we're going to talk about is my low carb journey. I'm going to start by telling you that back in 2010, about the summer of 2010, I had this horrible rash and went to the doctor. And I didn't think anything. I thought it was heat rash. I was living in an 18-wheeler with my husband. And so, I mean, it would get hot in the truck. And um, it wasn't the greatest place, but anyway, ate whatever I wanted. I mean, chips and sodas and whatever. Um, but I had this rash that wouldn't go away. And so we went to the doctor to find out what it was. And he took my blood sugar and he said, "You're pre-diabetic." And the rash was a yeast infection on my skin. And it was because my sugars were high. So he told me about that and said that I needed to start to watch my sugars and we were going to try to deal with it with diet. And, well, so I got a hold of a nutritionist and told her I lived out on the road and had her, we talked about what I could eat and what I couldn't eat and what I should be looking for. And went to a truck stop one time to eat dinner and I looked at the menu and I couldn't find anything to eat. And so that was on my list. And so, other than salad, and so I got the menus from all the different truck stops and I sent it to my doctor or to my nutritionist. And I waited a couple of weeks and she came back. She says, "I can't find anything for you to eat either." So we started eating out of the truck. I started cooking in the truck and we had a microwave and we had a new wave, a little induction burner and one of those little hot pots that you plug in and boil water. And that's how I started. And, but it wasn't easy. I mean, I, did the best I could, but really and truly there wasn't anything I could do. And, we ended up getting in a very bad truck accident in November of 2011. And from then on, I was at home, which made things a little easier, but I still in denial. And in that time frame, my blood sugars got worse and I went from pre-diabetic to type 2 diabetic. And so, and I, put me on all these different pills and they didn't work. I had issues with some of them and that type of stuff. And so finally they ended up putting me on insulin. And the idea of me sticking myself every single day, twice a day or 2 to 3 times a day was not something I looked forward to. At the time, I was very heavy. And in fact, I'm going to show you a picture of, hang on, I'm trying to get there. Let's see. Okay. This was me in December of 2011. I was 285 pounds and was just starting on my low carb journey. I had not really done anything prior to that. I had people talk to me a little bit about it. The doctor even talked to me about doing a gastric bypass. And I was like, I'm not the best at taking medications, and gastric bypass requires that you take a whole lot of vitamins and minerals and that type of stuff because you can't absorb them anymore. And the idea of having to take medications like that all the time, lots of medications, and having to, wasn't a good idea for me because I'm not very compliant. I will be honest. I'm just not. So I decided, no, I would fight it on my own. And so I will tell you now, from that 285 pound picture, I am now down to under 200. So I've done pretty well. My blood sugars are better. I went from, the high 300s to 500s, and I'm now down to the 180s to 250s. So, and normal is 100 or less, between 170. So I've done decently, but you can see the difference between what I look like now and what I looked like then. So, um, so anyway, so I started looking into it and doing some reading and research on my own, and um, started thinking about keto. But the goal of keto is to get into something called ketosis, which to me is too close to ketoacidosis in my head, and therefore it bothered me a little bit to do that. But in doing my studying, I learned that your body, if it takes carbohydrates and breaks them down into things that it can use for energy to run your body, and the easiest thing for the body to break down is carbohydrates, and they break down into sugars, and then sugars spike your blood sugar. And if you're insulin resistant, the little gateway that gets the sugar, the glucose from your bloodstream to the into the cells become resistant to that that hormone that brings the sugar into it. So what happens is the sugar stays in your bloodstream, and therefore your blood sugars are high and you become diabetic. So um, with that in mind, I decided that the thing to do would be to try to go low carb and not necessarily keto. And my endocrinologist and my regular doctor was not particularly happy about it because my cholesterol was way up at "Why aren't you dead yet?" And they were concerned about my cholesterol getting too high. So, and my endocrinologist said that he didn't think that the keto plan was sustainable, that people didn't stay on it very well. So basically, what he told me was that he didn't think, just here, push more pills, more insulin, more medicine. Well, we'll up your insulin, we'll do this and we'll that. And it's like, you know, you get tired of the doctor pushing more medications on you and not addressing the issue. Um, so I thought, well, forget this. I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway, whether he likes it or not, which I don't think that everybody should do that, but it's in my case, I decided it was worth a try. So what I did was I started on low carb. Now, like I said, low carb is different from keto, and the the differences are kind of interesting. Um, I've done a few little things here to kind of help. Hang on, let me get there. And there we go. And so what I do is I put together a few little things here. And one of the things I can tell you is, a lot of people wonder what's the difference between keto and low carb. Well, keto is very restricted of the amount of carbs you have. It's basically low carb, moderate protein, and high fats. And what you're teaching your body to do is to use the fats that you are providing it along with the fats that you have stored to power it. So it's not as easy for the body to break down fats as it is for the body to break down carbs. Well, if you don't give it enough carbs, then it's going to go, okay, now what? And the next easiest thing to break down is fats. So the idea is that you're using the fats in your body, the stored fats plus the fats you provide, and you're limiting the carbs so that your body says, okay, if I don't have carbs and sugars, then I have to go to the next best thing. And so it breaks down the fats into the sugars that power it. Okay. So a keto diet is a carb restriction of less than 50 grams of net carbs per day. Okay. So that means that you can have no more than 50 grams of net carbs. Now, 50 grams is a lot of carbs, and depending on your body type, depending on what you're doing it for, um, will depend on how quickly you want to lose weight. It will depend on how many carbs. Now, there's people who go very restrictive that go to like 20. There are some that go to like 17. grams of net carbs per day. And then there are some that want to go slower, and so they go up into the 30s and 40s. Okay. So low carb is a carb restriction between 50 grams and 150 grams of net carbs per day. So you see there's a huge difference. Okay. So it's less restrictive on the carbs. So you're feeding your body more carbs, which keeps it kind of going on the sugars, and it doesn't put you into ketosis, because the ketosis is because you have so low in your carbs that your body has to burn that fat. So that is the difference between one of the differences between the two. Now, on a keto diet, your protein intake is restricted between 20% and 22% of your total calorie intake per day. Okay. So again, you're looking at a moderate protein, whereas the low carb is much higher in protein. It's actually a high protein, moderate fat, low carb. That's how a low carb diet is versus a um, low carb, moderate protein, high fat. So you can see the difference. So the protein levels in a low carb diet is between 0.6 grams to 1.4 grams of protein per pound of body weight, okay, per day. So there's a slight difference in how it's figured how much protein you should have. And then the fat intake is higher to compensate for the lower carb and protein intake in a keto diet. The fat is what keeps you feeling full. So you're using not just any fat, you're using quality fats, lean meats, not high saturated fats, and using quality fats, not those ones that are highly processed and that type of things, like olive oil and avocado oil and things like that, coconut oil. Those are the types of fats that you're using in a keto diet. And it's the same in the low carb. You're going to use the same types of fats, but you're going to have a less percentage of fat to help the feeling full, help feeling full than the keto diet. So you're actually going to use your proteins to help keep you full instead of the fats. So keto, and now here's the interesting thing. Keto diets have been shown to be effective in treating seizures and epilepsies and possibly heart disease. The better fats and the lower carbs apparently help heart disease, and definitely the mechanisms behind it, I don't know, but apparently in the studies that have been going on, they have found that it has had a positive effect on people who suffer from seizures or epilepsy. Now, on a low carb, high protein diets, they have been shown to aid in type 2 diabetes remission over time. So what that means is that as you go over time, and there's two things working here. One is the lower carbs, which is meaning lower sugar in your blood, and the other is the fact that you've lost weight. There's a correlation between being obese or overweight and type 2 diabetes. Last but not least, the goal of keto diet is a state of ketosis where the body burns fat for energy instead of carbs and proteins. Whereas the goal of low carb is to control the blood sugars, and a happy side effect is weight loss, as you can see, because I've lost about 75 to 85 pounds, somewhere in there. So really quite a good thing. So a lot of people wonder what kinds of things they can buy or have on a low carb diet. Hang on, I had to take an antihistamine today. Allergies are bad, and so I'm really dry. So give me a minute. Anyway, so the things you can buy for a low carb diet, the list is long and varied. There's actually, you can have quite a bit of food and you can stay full, and a lot of these things you don't feel like you're missing much. You might miss some things. Breads and pastas and rice and grains and that type of stuff is definitely something I miss. But I'm a meat eater. I love the meat. So I can have a whole lot of meat and a whole lot of vegetables and be happy. The other thing I miss quite a bit is the sweets, but there is kind of a little thing that I do with that. So I still get my sweets when I want them. But anyway, so um, these little pictures that I'm showing you here, they will be up on the community tab on the Simply Low Carb site. That is, let me give you that so you can see where it is. There it is. That is the sister channel to Sinfully Good. I'm also streaming on that channel today. But it's Simply Low Carb, and you will find these lists on that channel. So in the community tab. So if you need to go back and take a look at what these lists say, feel free to do that. They'll be there. In fact, some of them are already there. So anyway, so things that now I've broken this down into green meaning good, meaning low carb friendly, and red meaning avoid, which is low carb unfriendly. Now, occasionally you will see a green equals or yellow equals moderate or okay, but right now in the meats, basically it is green for good and red for avoid. So basically what you want to do on a low carb diet is you can have beef, any kind of beef, preferably grass fed, those that and organics. And this is why I say that your grocery bill will probably go up on this diet, because it does. I mean, these particular things are more expensive, and they're not the bargain basement stuff. You can do it on less money. You can do it without the grass fed and the organics, but it definitely is much better doing it with the organics and grass fed. So things like beef and deli meats, wild game, lamb, organic meats, pork, bacon, poultry, sausages, and there is a note on sausages, and I'll go over that in a minute. Tempeh, tofu, extra firm. And the ones to avoid is any prepackaged lunch meat, hams with added sugar or glazes, sausage with added sugar, breaded, ready-made meals. So you're wanting to stay away from the breaded things. You basically really want to try to look for grass-fed, free-range, and organic. And the reason why there's a note on the sausages is when you're shopping for sausages, look for kosher or no sugar added. The key word is no sugar added. You don't want any added sugars, or as few added sugars as you can in the products that you buy. Make sure you read the labels, and if you see sugar in the ingredient list, try and avoid it. Look for the carb count. There should be no carbohydrates in meat products. So if you see carbohydrates in there, you have to kind of wonder, okay, where are they coming from? So definitely check your labels. A little bit later, or maybe in the next video, I will be going over how to read your labels. We'll see how long this takes. Okay, so now we're going to move on to seafood. Now, seafood, just about everything in seafood is low carb friendly. Aside from the breaded, prepackaged imitation crab legs, imitation lobster, and the crab cakes and things like that have a lot of breads in them, or man-made stuff. They are the avoid, but anchovies, crabs, fish of all types, lobster, shrimp, squid, and tuna, all are low carb friendly. The interesting thing to note about the fish and that type of stuff, the red meats have higher omega-3s, which are very good for you. The white meated fish are less so, but they're still low carb. You want to look for wild caught or sustainably farmed fish and seafood. Read the label on any pre-seasoned seafood product. So if it's been seasoned with something, make sure you read that label and see what's in it and what your carb count is. Avoid any seafood product that includes sugar or any grains in the ingredients. So Those are things to look for in your seafood. But like I said, most seafoods are going to be low carb friendly. I'm going to move on here. Whoops, wrong one. Okay, so we're looking at dairy now. Now, dairy is kind of interesting. Again, remember, I apologize for drinking, but I am getting a little bit cotton mouth. With dairy, this is where you have some that's got in the moderate area, the yellow. But for most part, you want grass-fed butter, ghee, which is clarified butter, eggs, soft ripened cheese, hard aged cheeses, semi-soft cheeses, plain Greek yogurt, not of the fruit at the bottom or the flavored ones, heavy cream, and nut milks. Now that's coconut milk, almond milk, cashew milk, those types of milks, nut milks, not the soy milk, not the oat milk, because soy is a legume, and oat milk is a grain, and those two things are not low carb friendly. If you're looking into the moderate, which is, you can have it, but in moderation. So if you want a whole lot of cheese, you don't want to grab some feta cheese or some Parmesan cheese. If you want a whole lot of cheese, you want to grab maybe some sharp cheddar or something along those lines, but Asiago cheese or Havarti cheese, some of those. But if you want just a little bit, like on top of your meatballs and marinara, a little bit of Parmesan is not going to hurt you. So basically, what you in the moderate range is the feta cheese, the Parmesan, light cream, which is half and half, sour cream, cottage cheese. Well, there's the half and half, whole milk, plain yogurt, kefir, ricotta cheese, and cream cheese. Now, I use quite a bit of cream cheese. Cream cheese is one of my things. And again, you have some more leeway when you're dealing in a low carb versus a keto. So a lot of this is keto oriented. So you can have a bit more of the moderate than you could on keto. The things you want to avoid is milk, which whole or skim, buttermilk, sweetened or fruit flavored yogurt or cream cheeses, light yogurt, margarine, soy milk, rice milk, oat milk, ice cream, and pudding. Now there are some puddings that you can have. There's a great one for chia, what they call chia seed or chia pudding, which you can have. It's just basically chia seeds soaked overnight in like heavy cream or a nut milk or something along those lines. It will make kind of a pudding consistency, almost tapioca consistency. Anyway, the moderate products have just slightly more carbs than the good category, so they're good for a low carb diet. Just be sure to account for the added carbs when using them. You will need to account for all the carbs that you do take in. So that's something to know. So we move on. We're going to go to vegetables. Now, here's where things get interesting, because vegetables, you think that all the vegetables are good, right? Not necessarily. A lot of your leafy greens are really good for the keto diet or the low carb diet. Spinach, kale, lettuce, avocados, which are a fruit, but a lot of people look at them as a vegetable, so I put them in here. You're actually going to see them in fruits as well. Avocados are one of the best sources of nutrients and oils and fats, as well as vitamins. One of the top things that a lot of people have. People eat a lot of avocados on low carb and on keto. Asparagus, olives are a great little snack. Cucumbers, sliced cucumbers, also a great little snack if you're a little hungry. Zucchini, eggplant, cauliflower. A lot of you have heard of cauliflower rice, or cauliflower mash. Cauliflower mash is a mashed potatoes replacement, so that's where that comes in. Broccoli, peppers, green beans, Brussels sprouts, artichokes, mushrooms. Now, with me, I'm not a big fan of cauliflower once it's cooked. So instead for my potato replacement, like if I'm doing a pot roast or, I want some potatoes, I will use mushrooms instead because I truly enjoy mushrooms. Radishes are another potato replacement. People roast those and they're actually slightly sweet once they are roasted. So it's a really good little potato replacement. Rutabagas, celery, and celery root. Um, the okay or moderate vegetables are carrots and onions. You can have them, but in moderation. Carrots have quite a bit of sugar in them. As you know, they're slightly sweet, right? And kind of the rule of thumb with these vegetables and fruits for that matter is that mostly vegetables though is that most above ground vegetables, the ones that come up out of the ground not are that are not root vegetables, there most of those are fine. Now there's a couple of them that aren't, but the root vegetables tend to be the higher in carbs as a general rule. So um, don't take that to the bank, but for the most part, you can count on the fact that if it comes out of the ground, it's probably higher carb and it's probably not something that you can have a whole lot of. As for the avoid the red list, potatoes and sweet potatoes. I'm sorry for all those people who love their potatoes on this diet. It is not something you can have. You can have it on occasion. You definitely want to plan it out. Plan for to have the potatoes and can include it within your list of what you've done once you figured out your carbs for the day. Include if you can add the potato in and still stay within your carb limit, then you can. However, do know that those are the potatoes and sweet potatoes are very high in carbs, the starchy vegetable. Corn's another one that I kind of miss. I will have it on occasion in moderation, but it's pretty rare. I usually have a lot of broccoli. I have asparagus. I have, spinach and salads. I love olives. I love avocados. So, green beans. That's another one that I really like. So those are the kind of the ones I stick to. But I will have corn on occasion, just because if you're having a shrimp boil or crawfish boil, you can't have that without having some corn. It's just not going to happen. So, anyway, this one, peas is another one that is actually high in carbs, and so again, I will have them on in moderation. Usually, I have them in like a chicken pie or that type of thing. Where I eat the stew and I don't eat the crust. Or I will have them in a casserole where I don't get a ton of them. It's not like I'm sitting there eating a pile of peas. Butternut squash. A lot of people get surprised at butternut squash because everybody believes that, squash is good for you, right? I mean, but butternut squash is actually pretty high in sugars and pretty high in carbohydrates. Excuse me. Acorn squash is another one. Beets, again, root vegetable, and turnips. So, I always thought until I started really looking at this that, oh, well, I'll just trade out if I do a sweet potato casserole for like Thanksgiving, I'll just trade the sweet potatoes out for butternut squash, or I'll mix them. And as it turns out, I was mixing two things that were very high in carbs. So I'm actually looking at this year, and you guys will get a chance to see this, but anyway, I'm looking at this year doing maybe a sweet potato pumpkin, because pumpkin is a carb friendly. So a sweet potato pumpkin mash sweet potato casserole. We'll see how that comes out. We'll see, but that's one of the things I'm considering. But anyway. So fruits. Now, fruits are kind of interesting in some of the things that you can and can't have. I will tell you that keto, if you're doing keto, you're basically going to have to stick to the berries, the raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, and blueberries. Coconut's okay, mainly because it has all those wonderful oils, lemons, and limes, and that's about as far as you can go on keto. Whereas Low carb, you could do cantaloupe, watermelon, and peaches. They're on the verge of being in the moderate, but they are low carb friendly. And keto, not so much. To avoid, the ones to avoid is oranges, cherries, pineapples, kiwis, apples, pears, mangoes, grapes. Bananas are probably one of the worst. Plums, pomegranates, and dates. Um, as well as dehydrated fruits, any dehydrated fruit, because it concentrates those sugars. So, but if you wanted to do a nice little fruit salad, do a berry salad. Use raspberries, blackberries, strawberries, and blueberries. Maybe throw some coconut in there, and call it a day. And maybe use a little bit of plain Greek yogurt and a little bit of artificial sweetener, and it would make you a very nice little fruit salad. The lowest carb fruits are the berries, but um, for me, in the case of low carb diet versus keto, I consider any fruit that is in the single digit of carbs a good fruit. Okay. So that's where the cantaloupe and the watermelon and the peaches come in, because they're still in single digits in the amount of net carbs per serving. All fruits contain natural sugars, so they should be eaten in moderation. That's any fruit. Dried fruits concentrate sugars and should be avoided. Now, one of the things that's not on here that is usually a lot of people look at and consider it a vegetable is tomatoes. Now, tomatoes are in the good category in moderation. Okay, there is quite a bit of sugars in tomatoes. So, keep that in mind. It's about the same as peaches in what its carb count is. So now we come to the grains and legumes. Okay. And unfortunately, almost all the grains and legumes are avoid. So that cuts into a lot of things that a lot of us really like. But unfortunately, they are all high in carbs. So things like breads, biscuits, muffins, croissants, rice, pasta, oatmeal, cream of wheat, barley, millet, quinoa, couscous, white flours, any of the white flours, any of the wheat flours, rice flour, cornmeal, soy flour and meal, amaranth, rye, muesli, bulgur, spelt, tortillas, most of your tortillas. Although I will tell you, there's some really good low carb tortillas that you can't tell that they're low carb. They're actually really good, and they're very low in carbs. So look for those. Pinto beans, black beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, navy beans, lima beans, baked beans, and all lentils. Those are all avoid. They are all high in carb, and I'm sorry about the bad news about that. And that's a sticking point for a lot of people, is that how can I go on a diet or a food plan that I can't have breads, I can't have, rice, I can't have pastas. It's not that you can't have them, it's that you have to plan for them. That's the key, and always in moderation. So, like I said, the bad news here is most, if not all, grains and legumes are high in carbohydrates. While many are great sources of protein, the price in carbs is higher than it is in meat. So you're better off getting your proteins from your meats than you are from things like beans. So that's unfortunate, but that's low carb for you. Now, you want to go interestingly, and I've got an area that's good news for you too coming up, so don't feel bad here. So when you're talking about nuts and seeds, most of your nuts and seeds are good. So things like almonds, Brazil nuts, hazelnuts, macadamia, peanuts, pecans, pine nuts, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, and most any other seed are good. Very, very good for a low carb diet. They make excellent snacks if you're wanting to look for something that you can just kind of munch on. Nuts and seeds are one of the ways to go. So the good news here, by the way, the moderate, so there's two in moderate, is pistachio and cashew. And the reason is they have more sugars in them. So the good news here is most nuts and seeds are great for low carb. Nuts and seeds make great snacks between meals if you're hungry. Pistachios and cashews are in the double digit carb values and are best used in recipes that contain plenty of fiber. So you can put cashews and pistachios in a recipe that has a lot of fiber and a lot of, say, you're doing a bunch of vegetables, you're doing maybe a Chinese vegetable dish, throw some cash or some pistachios in it or some cashews in it, because the fiber in the vegetables, especially if you're using things like kale, or the high fiber vegetables, um, they will knock down the carbs, and I'll explain how that works when we get to looking at labels. But anyway, so you can have those kind of things within in dishes that have a lot of fiber in them. So that's the best place to use those. So we're down to oils and fats. So like I said, there's certain oils that are good and certain oils that are not so good. And some of them will surprise you, actually. So the good ones are coconut oil, olive oil, hemp oil, flaxseed oil, walnut oil, avocado oil, grass-fed butter. That's real butter. Ghee and palm oil. Now, here's where some of the surprises come in. Some of them you're going to go, yeah, yeah, I know. Red, the avoid oils are vegetable oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, canola oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil, grapeseed oil, margarine, vegetable shortenings, and plant based spreads. So, vegans and vegetarians may have a little bit of trouble because they do a lot of stuff in plant based instead of animal based. So, it may give you a little bit of issues, but if you can do them, just be aware that your carb counts, you're going to have to adjust your carbs to account for the fact that you're getting higher carb amounts in those. So here's the thing about fats, however. As I said earlier, fats make you feel full and are great sources of vitamin A and E, along with vital nutrients like thiamine and riboflavin. Avoid artificial trans fats that are found in most microwave popcorns, some creamers, margarines, and shortenings. Highly processed fats contain high levels of omega 6 and are bad for inflammation and your health. So, if you have sore joints or you have swelling in places, the omega 6s in the processed fats will irritate those. So, do be aware of that. All right, drinks. Here we go. So, what kind of drinks can you get? And a lot of people I see drinking Diet Coke and some of these other things, and really and truly, those drinks are not so good for you, and it's mainly because of what they're using as an artificial sweetener. So let's start out with the green ones. Water obviously has zero carbs. Water with lemon, unsweetened tea, black coffee, and nut milks are the best things for drinks. And of course, you want to avoid full fledged, full on Coca Cola sodas, diet sodas, fruit juices, energy drinks, sports drinks, and milk. So here's the thing, drinks can be a challenge because drinks that you might think would be okay aren't. If you need sweeteners or cream in your coffee, use stevia or monk fruit drops and look for nut creamers, but make sure to check for added sugars. So make sure you read those labels, make sure, look down in the nutrition area and see if it has added sugars, or look in the ingredients and see if there's sugar in the ingredients. Heavy cream in moderation can also be used, and there are great sugar-free coffee syrups for even more flavor. Just make sure you check the label for sugars and avoid artificial sweeteners like aspartame, saccharin, and Splenda. Diet sodas sweetened with stevia are okay in moderation. So you need to make sure that if you're drinking a diet soda, you look at it and what's the sweetener they're using, because really and truly there are problems, and I'll get into that here in a little bit, with things like aspartame, saccharin, and Splenda, some of the other ones. So here's where the good news comes in. Ready for this one? Alcohol. So the good news here is that most of your alcohols are low carb friendly. Light beers like Bud Select, Michelob Ultra, Natural Light, and Busch Light, wine, red and white, hard liquors like gin, vodka, whiskey, tequila, almost all of them are low carb. The problem that you run into when you have alcoholic beverages is that the mixers are the problem, not the alcohol itself. So if you can drink it on the rocks or straight, there you go. So if you enjoy your tequila or you enjoy your vodka or gin or whiskey, drink it neat. Things to avoid is full on beers, sangria, which is a wine that has a lot of fruit in it, and that's why it is not on the good list. And any of the mixers like sodas, fruit juices, margarita mix, sweetened coconut cream, tonic water, and club soda. So those types of things are not so good on a low carb diet. So, like I said, the good news is that most alcohols are low carb or carb free, but full flavored beers are brewed with grains, which is why they are not considered low carb. However, light beers are much lower in carbs. Coors Light, while low, is one of the highest. So, if you plan to have more than one, choose one of the other light beer selections. When it comes to cocktails, it's the mixers that become the problem. So, enjoy your alcohol. You can have it. All right, here we go with the sweeteners. And I'm going to go into why some of these things, while they are low carb and all of that, are not particularly good in a low carb diet. So we're going to stay with the green first. We're going to do stevia is good, monk fruit, allulose, which is actually a fiber, erythritol, swerve, and botcha sweet. All of those are good sweeteners or sweetener replacements, okay? They're not necessarily artificial. A lot of them are natural. The ones to avoid is sugar, obviously. Sugar in the raw, dextrin, mannose, agave nectar, turbinado sugar, saccharin, aspartame, and I will tell you there's a special one for xylitol. That's why it's in the not, but it is something that is low carb friendly. It can be in the good, but there's a reason I have it in the avoid. Okay, so while obviously sugar is to be avoided, when reading the labels, it can be a bit tricky as manufacturers have taken to calling sugar by many different names like dextrin, mannose, and evaporated cane juice. Sweeteners like saccharin and aspartame have cancer concerns. That's why they're in the avoid list. And while xylitol is an approved low carb sweetener, I have it on the avoid list because even in minute amounts, it can be deadly to pets. I'm going to tell you a little story. Again, I spent some time prior to when I was in the truck with my husband as a veterinary assistant. And we had a cat come in that the owner had made diet cookies for, I think, her neighbor. And she had used xylitol. And she cleaned her counters off. And, even when you clean your counters off, a lot of times there's a slight residue. And, cats, they will climb on the countertops and walk across and that type of stuff. Well, this cat jumped on the countertop and walked across the countertop, went off into a window somewhere and started cleaning himself and was licking his paws and got very, very sick pretty quickly. And she brought the cat in and told us what was going on. And we, looked it up and we called poison control. And we said, this is a situation. And they gave us the things to give you, what to do to treat. And we still lost the cat. So it is, even in very, very minute amounts, it is deadly to animals. So in my house, I do not keep, hello, Joe. I do not keep xylitol in my house for any reason, for that reason. So that's why I have it in the avoid list. Now, when we come to condiments and herbs and spices, Most condiments are fine for low carb, and the key is to read the labels. You want to stay away from things that have high sugar or sugar added condiments like honey mustard, regular ketchup, salad dressings. Look for sugar free condiments and avoid low fat. I'm going to show you why here in a bit. In things like mayonnaise, stay away from polyunsaturated fat or any soy oil, but rather a mayonnaise made with olive oil. There's a lot of mayonnaises out there that are now made with olive oil. So go towards those instead of the regulars. As for herbs and spices, give me a minute. Like I said, allergies and antihistamines. There we go. Anyway, for herbs and spices, most of the herbs and spices are fine, but be cautious when you're purchasing prepared spice blends, which is why I make my own. Read the ingredients and look for sugars added in all of their forms. So remember, I said that there are different names for sugars. Make sure you check to make sure that there's no sugars in there. Read the entire ingredient label, as sugars can be hidden at the bottom of the list, and choose healthy salts like natural sea salt or pink Himalayan salt that have minerals, trace minerals, and help combat electrolyte imbalances, which sometimes happens with low carb and especially happens with keto. So those are things to definitely look at. And that's in general, for your health. Now, when we're talking pantry staples, what do I buy for pantry staples? Things like flour and salt and that type of stuff. So the things that you can get for pantry staples if you're going low carb or keto is any of your nut flours like almond flour, coconut flour, pecan flour. You're going to want some xanthan gum. Hemp hearts, I use those actually as a rice replacement. Collagen helps with your hair and with your fingernails. Grass-fed gelatin. There's a lot of things that you make with that have a gelatin to them, where you bloom a gelatin, and so you want a grass-fed gelatin powder or gelatin sheets. Unsweetened cocoa, which is going to get into your ability to do some sweet stuff. Fibers such as oat fiber and bamboo fiber. Those have much more fiber to them than they do carbs. So that's why you can use an oat fiber instead of a, oatmeal or oat flour. The oat fiber is actually the outer husk, and they grind that down. So there's not a lot of nutritional value in it. Baking soda, baking powder, unflavored whey protein powders. I do fried chicken tenders, chicken fried steak, and chicken fried chicken, all using a whey protein powder as instead of flour as my breading. And MCT oil powders. Now, or MCT oils, and they can come in droppers too. The MCTs are medium chain triglycerides. I'll get it out in a minute. But anyway, and they are less easily absorbed. But the neat thing about them is that they also bring your fat levels up, and they have a vanilla one that makes a really great coffee creamer. Now, when you're talking about using moderation, I use cornstarch in moderation. There's two reasons. One is that I use it for when I'm using it to thicken a gravy or a sauce, and I use it in such small amounts just to get that thickening that it really, and I've run it through the macros, and it definitely does not affect the carb amount or carb count that is in that particular recipe, because there's so little of it as opposed to the liquid. The other thing is, and we're going to go back to xanthan gum, is I don't care for the mouthfeel of xanthan gum. To me, it gives things almost a slimy texture, and so I'm not a big fan. Now, if you put it in things like if you're making low carb biscuits using almond flour and that type of stuff, because those things don't have they don't have gluten, so there's nothing really to hold them together. The xanthan gum helps in that. So, and you don't notice that mouthfeel. But when it comes to things like sauces and gravies, it definitely has that. Things to avoid: grain flours, rice, pasta, bread, legumes, and cornmeal. Again, remember, those are the things that we had talked about a little bit earlier when we talked about breads and grains. So these are things that you should have in your pantry. I keep my almond flour in the refrigerator because it has a lot of fat in it and it can get rancid if you're not careful. So I keep it in the refrigerator or the freezer. All right, so we're going to start talking about labels and that type of stuff here. This is, I wanted to show you guys why I always say that you're better off going non-fat free to avoid the fat free dressings and that type of stuff versus the regular. And the reason is because, oh my goodness, histamines are killing me. Anyway, the reason is because fat is flavor. And I don't know if you've ever heard it in the cooking shows or that type of stuff. You'll hear the chef say fat is flavor. They're not lying. Fat is flavor. And so when you take the fat out of something, it has no flavor. It doesn't taste right. It doesn't taste good. So they have to find a way to put flavor back into it without adding fat, because we're saying fat free, right? So what they do is they load it full of carbohydrates. And the example is here. Now, I know this is difficult to see. Again, these slides will be up in the community tab in Simply Low Carb. So you can see them there if you want to take a look at them a little closer. However, I have two Hidden Valley Ranch. One is the regular, one is fat-free, both 16 ounce. Okay. I don't know if I can bring this in any closer. Okay, we're going to take a quick look at the nutritional facts. And this is part of reading a label, okay? So if you look at the nutritional facts, you look at the regular ranch, which is over here. If you look, serving size is 2 tablespoons, okay? Same over here for the fat-free, 2 tablespoons. But I want you to look at the difference in the carbs, okay? Right here, it says total carbs is 2 grams of total carbs. That's not bad, right? 6 grams of total carbs. Again, not bad, but definitely not as good as 2 grams. So that's why I say, when you're dealing with things that say fat-free, make sure you look at the carbs and see what the difference is, and make sure you do it by the serving size. All right. Now there's reasons why the Hidden Valley Ranch is not going to be, even the regular is not going to be good for low carb, and I will go into those as we get further along into this. But just for the illustration of the fact that they add carbs to a fat-free product to make it taste better, that was what this was the illustration for. So and I showed that to you. So that's what when I say, you're better off going with regular than fat-free. So we're going to look at how to read a label. And the first thing we're going to look at is how to figure out what net carbs are. There is a formula that you use to figure out net carbs. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use a popular low carb product to show how we decide if it's really low carb. And the product that we're looking at is a product called Rio's Tomato Basil Marinara Sauce. Okay. So again, I'm going to try to pull this in a little bit. So if we're looking at just our label right here, we're looking at our label, we're looking at how many total carbs do we have per serving. Now this is per serving, which is 1/2 cup. All right. So you have 3 grams of total carbs per serving. Well, okay, nice to know, but we're going to work our macros on net carbs. And what net carbs is if you look at this formula right here, it is net carbs equals total carbs minus fiber plus sugar alcohols. All right. So basically what you have here is you have 3 grams total carbs. You have 1 fiber. Don't look at this because this is not a sugar alcohol. This is the natural sugars in the tomatoes. So there's not much you can do with those sugars. And we'll discuss that in a little bit because remember I told you to kind of try to stay away from sugars. So what we're going to do is look at the equation as 3 grams minus 1 gram plus 0 grams, which equals 3 grams minus 1 gram, which means net carbs are 2 grams per serving. Okay, so how we added the two together, these two together, whoops, sorry, these two together, and then subtracted them from this one. So, and that gives you your net carbs. All right. So this is actually not too bad. This is actually a really good product. A lot of people use it. And people swear by it. Again, there are sugars in it, but they're natural sugars. Okay. We're going to look at a different one here. Now, this is a product called Swerve Granular. This is one of the sugar replacements for baking. Some people use it in like their teas and that type of stuff, but a lot of people use this in baking, and this is a very, very good product. So we're going to, again, using the same formula. Let me get closer in here. Whoop. All right. Whoop. So we have total carbs of 4 grams, right? There's no fiber, but erythritol is a sugar alcohol. So we're going to take 4 grams minus 0 grams plus 4 grams equals 4 grams minus 4 grams, which means net carbs on this particular product is 0. So, and the other sugar alcohols are glycerin, mannitol, sorbitol, xylitol, erythritol, isomalt, lactitol, and maltitol. So those are all sugar alcohols. So, once you figure out what the sugar alcohols are, it's going to make it a whole lot easier to do this program. But even so, you can still do it without knowing exactly what they are. All right. Now, the next thing we're going to look at when we're talking about looking at labels is ingredients. So we figured out that this is the Rayos again. All right. We figured out that the net grams or the net carbs is right around 3. Okay. However, one of the things we did notice is that there were 3 grams of sugar. Remember, I told you it was natural sugars. There's not a lot you can do about natural sugars. There's natural sugars in just about everything. So you're going to have some sugars in things that are naturally made, tomato sauces, vegetable types of things. There's always going to be fruits, obviously. There's always going to be natural sugars. So we don't look at the natural sugars when we're looking at the ingredients. What we're looking at is for added sugar. So if you're looking at an ingredient label and you see sugar in the list, that's one you want to avoid, okay? Because they've added sugars to the sugars that were already there naturally. So you definitely want to make sure that you avoid things that have added sugar. Now, the other thing that you also notice is that we have in here olive oil right here. Now, the olive oil is one of those good oils that we were talking about. And my son is over there waiting to use the ice maker, I think. So give us a minute. We're going to let him use the ice maker real quick, and I'll continue to talk. Go ahead, Chuck. You're fine. Anyway, so notice that there are none of the oils and fat that were listed in the avoid list. It has olive oil. Olive oil is one of the good oils, and we do definitely want to look at that. Now, let's go back and look at the regular ranch dressing. Remember, the carb count was fine in the regular ranch. It was 2 grams to start out with, okay? So that's well within the carb count that we can use. However, let's look at the ingredient list, shall we? So in the ingredient list, I've highlighted the numerous things that make this product not carb friendly. It has vegetable oil. That's one of those oils. And that's the first product. And the thing you have to realize is that the higher in the list it is, the more of it is contained in the product. Hi, Juliana. So if it's really high in your list, then that means there's a whole lot of it. And that's the first product is vegetable oil, and that's on our avoid list. Okay. We're looking at the fourth product? Yeah, fourth ingredient is sugar. Again, remember, we're saying added sugars are not something that we want to do. Natural sugars are fine. Added sugars we avoid. So, and the next one is cultured non-fat buttermilk. Well, okay, buttermilk is an animal milk, cow's milk. And again, milk, buttermilk, soy milk, low fat, skimmed, those are all in that list of avoid. So we have what? And then we have soy a little bit further on in there. So here we go. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things within our avoid list, even though the carb count on the dressing is within our carb count. The added sugars and the vegetable oils and those types of things are not. They're in the avoid list. So this is one that you would want to avoid. Now, having said that, one of the things as you look at this, you can see now why. What I do is I make my own ranch seasoning, as I've put on the channels, and I make my own ranch salad dressing by using olive oil, sour cream, mayonnaise, and a little bit of heavy whipping cream or heavy cream. And that's how I make my own ranch at home. So that way I avoid all of that stuff. So anyway, so let's move on. So in reading a label, one of the things you start to realize as you really start reading these labels is that sometimes packaging really lies to you. Now, this particular packaging, this is a I'm trying to remember what this was. Oh yeah, this was a cereal. Yes, this was a cereal. It is a cereal that has big letters on the front of the box, keto. All right. And as we look at this packaging or the ingredients in this particular product, it doesn't look too bad. I mean, milk, protein, erythritol, allulose, peanut butter's fine. Whey protein isolate. Remember, I told you we did whey protein isolate powder in. I use it to coat chicken. Inulin, which is a probiotic. Palm kernel oil, which is one of the good oils. It's a little bit pricey. It's a little bit expensive, but it is one of the good oils. Palm oil. Then we get to canola oil. Well, canola oil is on our bad list. Rice starch. Rice is a grain. Even though it's a starch, it's still going to be carby. And soy lecithin. So we're talking about a soy product. So, hello, Sophia. So this is a keto product, which should mean that it is good for low carb, that has 3 ingredients in it that we're supposed to avoid. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have it. You just need to be aware of it. Okay. So even though the carb count is relatively low, and they say the net carbs on this, I believe, was 6 grams per serving. Now, that was before you added milk. So you're talking 6 grams plus whatever your net milk adds to it. So that's also another consider. So are you going to really want 13 grams of carbs for breakfast? Is that, what you really want to do? So that's a decision that you have to make. And again, you have to plan for it. Here's another one that is a keto that says that this one doesn't particularly say keto on the cover, but it does on the front, but it does say it has 6 grams of carbs. And if you looked at the packaging, you would say, okay, 6 grams of carb per serving, right? Well, okay, this is a keto bread. The second thing on there is unbleached enriched wheat flour. Again, you can't have grains and grain flours on a low carb or keto diet. It has sugar. It has wheat gluten. So if you're gluten intolerant, this is not one for you. But this says that, my goodness, it has 6 grams of carbs per serving. All right. Um, so again, we have numerous things on the label, and the very second thing on the label is an unbleached wheat flour. Again, and flour is something that we're not supposed to have on our low carb diet. So, but here's where it gets interesting. Okay, so you've looked at the label and you see 6 grams. Great, I can have a sandwich. You look on the back, it says serving size is 2 slices. Awesome, that gives me a chance to have a sandwich with some tuna or some ham or something in it, right? Well, all right. So we're saying that, let's do our math problem that we did earlier, where it says let me pull this up and make this bigger so you can get a better look at it. So let's look at our total carbs. Our total carbs are 17 grams, right? Our dietary fiber is 4 grams. There are no sugar alcohols. When it says includes 2 grams of added sugar, they mean sugar, not sugar alcohols. All right. Total sugar is 3 grams. Well, it's not telling you that's a sugar alcohol. It's telling you that it's a sugar. So we can't include those in that equation that we had. So, all right. So we're saying, okay, so we're saying that it has net carbs of our total carbs. Sorry, that was a misprint. Total carbs of 17 grams. We have 4 grams of fiber and 0 grams of sugar alcohols. So we add the 4 grams and the 0 grams, which equals 4 grams. So you have 17 grams minus 4 grams, which means net carbs is 13 grams per serving. What happened to the 6 grams? Remember we said 6 grams on the label? So it may be 6.5 grams per slice. That's just the bread with nothing on it. And this is why reading labels is so important. If you saw that advertised of 6 grams on the package and then saw the serving size of 2 slices, without doing the math, without truly looking at it, you would think that you were only getting 6 grams for that sandwich that you were having plus whatever you put in it, right? When in reality, you're probably getting closer to 20 by the time you put stuff in it. So that's a huge difference. So this is why looking at labels is so important. And definitely reading the ingredients and reading the nutritionals and doing the math and breaking down what total carbs versus net carbs. Now, you can do low carb going total carb. It tends to give you a smaller number, which is discouraging when you look at it, which is why I use net carbs, because it gives me a bigger number in that macro. So it's not as discouraging. So instead of only being able to have, say, 20 total carbs, I can have 53 net carbs. Okay, I mean, that's kind of how it works. All right. So I'm going to introduce you to Carb Manager. Now, this is a little app that I use. It's a really good little app to use if you're counting carbs, low carb, keto, high protein, low fat. It has a whole lot of different things, and you can customize it to where you want your carb set up to be. This is actually mine. Now, I just threw some stuff in there, a full day's meal, to show you what it looks like. But it is something you can have on your computer and on your smartphone. And the neat thing about it is you can actually go down the aisles, and if you don't know and you're not finding the information you're looking for on the label, you can literally scan the barcode and it will give you that information if it's in the database. So if it's some new product, sometimes it doesn't have it, but it makes it really easy if you're like grocery shopping and you're trying to figure out, is this one better than this one? It'll tell you. So anyway, so in looking at this, I can see part of the breakfast. That it goes down to lunch, dinner, and snack. But anyway, I have it set up on this particular example. I have it set up for about 143 grams of protein, which I'm doing a high protein, moderate moderate fat, low carb. Okay. So you're looking at, I've done 101 just in protein. This is for an entire day. I've done 101 grams out of 143. Now, the thing about, thing you to look at when you're looking at how these works is carbohydrates are a limit, protein is a goal, and fat is a fulcrum. Okay. So when we say fat is a fulcrum, that means it's something that you can go above or stay below, but just so that you stay full. Because remember, fat tends to help you feel fuller. So, and these are good fats, not just any old fat out there. All right. So I've done 101 out of 143 grams of protein. Now, you see, I went over on my fat, but not by a lot, about 8 grams. Okay. And my calories, I've actually a little bit under. But here's the neat one. My carbs, I have the ability to have 53 grams of carbs. I only had 44. All right. So this gives you 2 graphs to look at. It gives you a pie chart, and then it gives you another line chart. So you can see exactly where you're at. This is a neat little program. It works really well. And even when I write recipes, if you look at in the Simply Low Carb, you'll see something which is nutritional information. Where I'm getting that information is this app. Okay, so I will write the recipe in there, set it up for how many people it serves, and then it will break it down by serving and tell you what you're serving, how much you're getting. So it's a really, really neat little app. It's really, really worth getting. So anyway, so that's the end of the slideshow. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I said, these pictures, these graphics, I will have in the community section of the Sinfully Low Carb. And just so you guys who didn't see it who came in late, I want to show you. This is not a picture I'm proud of. This was December of 2021. This was almost 2 years ago. And you will be amazed. You see what I look like now? This is what I looked like then. So that was just shy of 2 years ago. So it does work. It has helped my blood sugars. Me showing this picture is amazing because, to be quite honest, it was very difficult to get me in front of a camera, and I would have never done this if I looked like that. So definitely it works really well. So anyway, if anybody has any questions, anything you want me to go back over or anything like that, let me know in the chat. I thank you, Joe and Juliana and Sophia, for joining me. And like I said, it's a lifestyle. It's not a diet. And people with health issues, especially kidney, which we're talking about Steve here. I do not suggest grams per day is a basic unit of measurement when you're talking about things like vitamins, minerals, fats. Those are measures in grams per day. You can move it over to the kilo. Like, I don't know what the conversion is on it, but if you're talking about how many, there's an area where I talked about, and you'll see it if you rewatch the beginning, but where I talk about how much protein, and it's so much percentage per pound body weight, and there is a breakdown for that on kilos too. So yes, part of it is that, but when you're measuring things like fats and carbs and proteins, you do measure them in grams. So yeah, that's what that's about. Anyway, what I was saying about Steve-O, high fat and high protein especially challenges the kidneys. So when somebody has a chronic illness or things like kidney failure and that type of stuff, and you you have to be very careful. And so my statement in that is check with your renal doctor, check with your regular doctor, and really see how high you can go on proteins, how high you can go on fats, how low you can go on carbs, and see how that will work out, because we don't want to challenge kidneys that are already having trouble. So anyway, your dad has it with protein, that he's allowed 1 gram per kilo. Um, has what, diabetes, or if he has kidney failure? Because again, I mean, he's very, very restricted on protein. You know, if you're talking about 1 gram per kilo, because that's really low. Well, I mean, I say that. Some of the protein, the high protein diets, they'll go from 0.6 to 1.4 grams per kilo. So something like that. So yeah, again, I don't know the actual conversions, and I'd have to go back and look, because I did it in the English American, version. But there is that information out there about how it converts to grams per kilo. So anyway, other than that, I'm hoping that this gives you guys some things to think about, and helps you in some of the things, because going on to low carb and going on to keto a lot of times is daunting, because it's like, what can I have? What can I not have? What types of things are going to that I'm going to crave, that I'm going to miss. And I'm telling you, if you're a potato grain person, you're going to miss the grains. I miss the potatoes. I miss the pastas. I've never been a big fan of rice, so rice is not a big thing, but I certainly miss bread. And yeah, it's you are going to miss it. But here's the thing about it, is that you don't totally deprive yourself of those things. You just plan for them. And you have, in a low carb diet, because you have such a even high amount. I mean, we're talking about, keto a lot of times is 20 grams of carbs per day. Okay. Net carbs per day. And there's no way you're going to fit a baked potato or a couple of pieces of toast in 20 grams per day, because a potato is going to take up your entire gram count or carb count for the entire day. So with low carb, because you have more carbs to work with, it allows you to plan and say, oh, well, I'm having steak and baked potato and a salad for dinner tonight. And it allows you, as long as you keep that potato relatively small. I have not tested the pumpkin, but I did talk about it a little bit, Sophia. So yeah, if you go back, you'll see when I talk about the potatoes and the vegetables. I talk about gonna try a pumpkin, puree with some maybe some sweet potato thrown in, because the only way I'm going to get my husband to eat it is if I throw some sweet potato in there. So, if I put a little bit of sweet potato and mostly pumpkin, I'm hoping I can get it by him. So yes, I am going to try it. We'll see how it goes. So I'm glad that he does not have blister. What about kidney? Because I'm thinking that's an awful low, although we're talking about grams per kilo, so it may not be as low as I think it is. It just sounds really low to me. Anyway, so yeah, Sophia, that the pumpkin idea is intriguing to me, and I found a couple of recipes that I'm going to Slight kidney issues. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm thinking that he's so low on protein. Like I said, protein will challenge the kidneys. In fact, um, you have to understand animal medicine and human medicine cross. I mean, we're all mammals. And so one of the things that when we have cats are notorious for having kidney failure when they get older. One of the things with cats that we do when we start seeing high BUN and high alt pos levels in their blood work is that we cut back. We put them on a low protein diet called KD, and so that knocks that down. So that's why that made sense to me. That's why I was asking you about whether or not he had kidney issues, because if you're bumping up your protein levels in the diet, then and you have a kidney issue, it will make it worse because you are challenging the kidneys. And that's why when I'm advising, when I'm looking at Stevo, oh yeah, uh it definitely will, yeah, ALS. Oh, I mean, I'm sorry he has ALS. I had a friend that had that. But anyway, uh, it will upset the kidneys. It will challenge the kidneys, and since Steve-O's on dialysis, we don't want to do that. So that's why we need to kind of look at. I need to get a maximum amount of protein that he can handle, and then I can and find out if maybe low carb is not the direction for him to go, but there are other diets that are food, lifestyles that may better work for him, that will give him the foods and the ability to lose the weight that he needs to be put on the list and to get his surgery, instead of keto and low carb. And once I find those levels out and figure out what diet that fits within, then I will do my level best to come up with recipes to help him with that. Mediterranean, that might work. Is that for the kidney, for the protein, for his kidney issue? Because Mediterranean might work. Now that I think about it, I'll have to look at it. I'll look at the macros on it and see what it is. That's a good idea. Thank you, Sophia. I will look at that, and that may be a way to go for Steve-O too. I mean, for all of it, okay. For the liver as well, okay. Um, yeah, I'll look into the Mediterranean and see what the macros are on that. He's French. Well, oui. But anyway, so yeah, hopefully, like I said, I'll look into the macros and see what the protein and fat levels are on the Mediterranean and how it's working, because I think Mediterranean's probably going to have a bit more carb to it than and with Steve-O having diabetes, that's where, I mean, there you kind of have to you know come to a happy medium on that. He may have to have more carbs, which will mean his blood sugars will be higher. But I think it's more important that we don't challenge his kidneys. So, we'll have to see how that goes. But yeah, the salads. Is there a lot of pasta in Mediterranean? I haven't looked at it one Mediterranean recently. So, um, I know there's a good number of salad. Well, the Mediterranean's a lot of olives and stuff like that, which is part of the low carb too. So, uh, yeah, we'll take a look at it and see what it is, and I'll look at it for your dad too. See what I can come up with recipes on that. So, see what we can come up. The salads don't have pasta. Okay, yeah. I was gonna say pasta's really high in carbs, and I don't know. Especially if now your dad's not dealing with diabetes too, is he? You know. I mean, if he's dealing with diabetes, the carbs are going to be. Steve-O's dealing with diabetes as well, and that's where I get a little concerned about if something. Okay, yeah. See, um, I'll have to look and see what the carbs are in the Mediterranean diet. I have to look at it because I worry about um, there being a lot of carbs in that, which is going to bounce his blood sugars up, which is going to exacerbate a bad situation already. So yeah, you know. Um, anyway, so like I said, I hope you found this informative. Again, this is all from my experience, what I've studied, what I've looked at. I am no doctor. Um, bell pepper, tomato, and pumpkin soup. Or that sounds really good. Um, there's a butternut squash pasta sauce that we made a soup out of that was really good. I'll have to look at it again. But yeah, it's probably really high in carbs, butternut squash is. But I bet you I could switch that out for pumpkin and it would be good. Anyway, like I said, hopefully this taught you a little bit. Hopefully that it's given you some information on how low carb works and why it works, in the same things that you can get when you go to the grocery store. So you're not quite so daunted. I spent a lot of time on these last couple of days on these graphics. So I will probably do a basics shopping list for low carb so that, you know, I can give you things that will, you'll see, or I'll put a link for one or something like that. So I can give you things that you will see that that you can pick up for just basic things to have in your house, to make this work. So I will try to get that done here in the next couple of days. I will get these slides that I have up um, into the community tab on Sinfully Low Carb. Um, Probably not in Simply Good, but I will probably put it in Simply Low Carb. If you need to know where that is, again, where is it? There it is. That's how to find Sinfully Low Carb. Some of the recipes will be recognizable from the Sinfully Good channel, mainly because they can go both ways. So definitely do that. Again, if you're on Sinfully Low Carb, go ahead and subscribe. If you're on Sinfully Good and you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And of course, if you guys feel the need, since I'm a good ways from monetization, help me pay for my grocery bill or whatever, you can buy me a Southern Sweet Tea at the Buy Me a Coffee site, and that's the link to that. So anyway, thank you guys for joining me again. I hope you learned something, and if you have any questions or comments, please add it to the comment of this video. I will check it out and see what I can do about answering the questions or comments. Anyway, I'm going to call this a wrap. We've been here almost an hour and a half. So, and me talking all by myself for an hour and a half. I'm really dry, especially after the antihistamines. So I hope you guys have a blessed day, and y'all have fun, man. I mean, eating's part of life, and eating right is always a good thing. If you feel the need to control your blood sugars, which is the reason I did this. I did not do this to lose weight. I did this to control blood sugars. The fact that I lost weight is a happy coincidence. Y'all have a great day. I will see y'all next time.